Hi, this is the second video in a series of videos working with two-dimensional arrays. In the first video, we were working on a problem called 2-dim array, where we created a seating chart array, and we printed that array in table form. And we're going to pick up from here. We said the last thing, or the next thing that we wanted to do was to print all of the elements of this array just on separate lines in what we call row major order. So let's go ahead and write that code, and then we'll talk a little bit about what row major order means exactly. So I'll put a little comment here saying printing each name on separate lines in row major order. So I'm going to once again do a print statement here so that it's obvious to us afterward exactly what we're doing when we see this output. So we're going to say traversing in row major order. Oops, forgot my semicolon. So just like in the last problem, the outer loop is going to control the rows again. So for int row equals 0, row less than seating chart dot length, row plus plus. And my inner loop is going to control my columns. So for col equals 0, oops, col less than seating chart of row dot length. Remember, seating chart of row dot length gets us the number of columns in that row. Now, in most cases, I could say seating chart of 0 dot length, as in most arrays, every row is going to have the same number of columns. And then finally, col plus plus. And inside this loop, all I'm going to do is print each element. So system.out.println seating chart of row col. And when I run this, you can see that my output is traversing in row major order, John, Mary, Ted, Susan, Jake, Amanda, Sean, Jen, Al. Let's take a moment to talk about what row major order means so that we can understand this output. So I'm going to skip a couple slides here and talk about row major order. In row major order, we visit the elements of the array in the following order. First, row 0, we do column 0, 1, 2, etc. to the end. And then row 1, column 0, 1, 2, etc. to the end. And then row 2 and row 3, and so on and so forth. The outer loop controls the rows, the inner loop controls the columns. So you'll notice our output here is our rows in down each row. So John, Mary, Ted, Susan, Jake, Amanda, Sean, Jen, Al. And that is what we call row major order. Now, let's talk about what we call column major order. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put another print line statement. So we can skip a line. And now I'm going to put a little comment here that informs us that we are going to be printing each name on separate lines in column major order. Now you can imagine that column major order would be to go down each column in order instead. So I'm going to do John, Susan, Sean, Mary, Jake, Jen, Ted, Amanda, Al. It turns out that doing this code is actually very, very, very simple. We're literally going to take our row major code and just flip-flop our two loop headers. That's it. So in other words, the outer loop controls the columns, the inner loop controls the rows, and that's it. That's all we have to do. So I'm going to put my print statement here, just so that we remember that we are traversing in column major order. And I'm going to do my outer loop. Remember, this time, I'll put a little comment here. In column major order, outer loop controls the columns. So I'm going to say for int col equals 0, col less than seating chart of, in this case, I have to kind of specify a row number because I have no row here. So I have to say something like seating chart of 0 dot length. See, now this is because in the last problem, you see that when we're in the inner loop, we have a row already. But here we're in the outer loop, we don't have a row yet. So we're just going to say seating chart of 0 dot length. And we're going to proceed, finishing off this outer loop with a col plus plus. Now, you'll notice, if you look closely at this last loop, we don't actually need those curly braces, do we? The outer loop only has one statement inside of it, a for loop. And that inner for loop itself only has one statement inside. So I'm not going to do the curly braces here. Now, my inner loop, though, I'm going to put a little comment that says in column major order, inner loop controls the rows. And so here we'll say for int row equals 0, row less than seating chart dot length, which remember is the number of rows in our array, row plus plus. Now you'll notice I can actually just take this print statement up here and literally just paste it in here. Because the row is already set up properly, the column is already set up properly. So I don't have to worry about anything else. So let's run this. And we'll see that we traversed in column major order here. I'll scroll up so we can see the names in order, but notice John, Susan, Sean is down the first column. Mary, Jake, Jen is down the second column, and Ted, Amanda, Al is down the third column. And so what this loop has done is it has printed in column major order. So to discuss column major order just a little bit, this is when the outer loop controls the columns and the inner loop controls the row. We go down column 0, row 1, 0, 1, 2, etc. Then down column 1, row 0, 1, 2, etc. Column 2, column 3, etc., etc. And you can see that the general form is that the outer loop controls the columns, the inner loop controls the rows. Now, at this point, I'd like you to find this slide, slide 15, in our PDF, or I mean, you could just copy from the screen, but it'll probably be a little bit easier if you have it separately in a PDF. And I want you to create this 2dim array 2 class in your Eclipse. I want you to pause the video, create this portion, and then there's going to be another portion in a moment, but I'm going to give a moment for you to pause the video and take this much down. And there's a second part to this program here. I'd like you to input this portion as well, and then we're going to discuss what this program does. So here's a copy of my 2dim array 2. And let's just run through this because I want you to see a couple things that we've done here and just see how to do these sorts of things. Um, in the main method here, we first create a two-dimensional array of cars. Remember, cars are like strings, except you can see here they're represented with inside single quotes, and you can only put one character inside. So I'm creating an array, a two-dimensional array of cars called board, and I'm creating it so that it is a 3 by 3 array. Now, this section right here is filling my array with O's and X's randomly. So you can see that I'm progressing through this array in row major order. I know that it's row major order because the outer loop is controlling the rows, the inner loop is controlling the columns. And what I'm doing inside here is I'm grabbing a random number from 0 to 1, and if X is 0, I'm filling that spot with an O. Else, I'm filling it with an X. Then in this next section, I'm just printing the array, once again in row major order. So I see the outer loop controls the row, the inner loop controls the column. And inside, I'm doing a printf statement where I'm just allowing, where the C indicates that it is a car data type, and the -2 indicates to allow 2 spaces for each character, with the extra space going at the end of each character, like that. So once this section runs, oh, and notice, I'm sorry, one other thing. Notice that I have a println statement at the end of each row. So after all my columns go, I do a println to move to the next row. So you can see after the whole array has been printed, here is my array. You can see it seems to be a pretty random assortment of O's and X's. You can see if I run it again, whole new assortment. Look at that, I have tic-tac-toe in every column. Whole new assortment, etc. Then this last section is going to clear the array. So once again, I traverse through the array in row major order, simply clearing out every row and column. So at this point, I have a challenge for you. I would like you to pause the video at this point, and I want you to complete this challenge right here. I'm going to show you this screen. Now, this is in your slides. This is slides 17 and 18. But I'm first going to show you this slide that gives you the requirements. I want you to create a class called toDimUserInput, and I want you to define a two-dimensional array of doubles, 2 rows by 3 columns. I want you to ask the user for values and store them in the array in row major order. So basically, you're going to set up a row major loop, or nested loop rather, and inside that loop, you're going to ask the user for a value and store it inside the array. Then I want you to print the array in table form. And then I want you to print all of the numbers on separate lines in row major order and print the numbers on separate lines in column major order. So these last 3 things are the things that we did in our original toDim array class. Here is the sample output for this. You see I asked them to enter 6 numbers, and then inside the row major loop, I'm receiving 6 different values. And now I've printed it in table form, and then on separate lines in row major order, and then in column major order again. Once again, here's the requirements. I want you to pause the video to do all of this. This is actually going to be the end of this video, though, and I'd like you to watch the next video for us to go over this.